I'm overwhelmed. I have over 50 pounds of tomatoes that need to be processed today. They're on the edge. They need to go into something. Come along with me and see what I'm going to do with these. The way it sits right now, my freezer's too full to put tomatoes in there. And that freezer's pretty full too. I guess I have to get creative. I see a couple of chicken carcasses and I see a bag of frozen vegetables. I can pull those out and make broth. It's not what I wanted to do today, but it gets those products out of the freezer so I have space for my tomatoes. In this freezer, I have a bag of oats that can come out and go into a container. That'll free up space for a couple of bags of tomatoes, but that's about it. With over 50 pounds of tomatoes, I can't process these all today. I can core and score and throw a bunch in the freezer to process another day. And I can core and score and throw a bunch in a crock pot and then put them through the food mill. I would like to jump in and process these tomatoes right away, but I have to make that freezer space. So let's get that broth going and then I'll come back to the tomatoes. I don't know about all of you, but as soon as I step into my kitchen, it starts to get too warm. And I shed hair into food and I don't like serving that kind of food to my friends and family and guests. So up goes the hair. That's when I mean business. If my hair's tied up, I'm ready to go. Come on into the kitchen. Every time I chop vegetables, I save the tops and tails of the onions, the tops of the peppers and the seeds. I save carrot peelings, tops and bottoms of the carrots. If they're in good condition, they go into a baggie. That baggie goes in the freezer. I won't use things that will be too strong. So I won't use hot jalapeno peppers or any of the hotter peppers. I won't use anything that's spoiled, like mushy tomatoes. I don't put tomatoes in these bags. This is for vegetables. Tomato is something else. Tomatoes is a different beast. But there's celery leaves and there's onions and peppers and all kinds of delicious things. There we go, a pot full of vegetables. I'm going to throw in one large bay leaf. The package has a lot of small ones in it, so I grabbed one large one. And then I'm going to cover the vegetables with water. There we go, it's covered now. So that was 4 liters of water in that big pot. It's about to there. So you can see, there's still lots of space at the top for boiling that. I'm going to put a lid on that and I'm going to simmer that for hours. The kitchen's going to get hot. I moved my vegetable broth pot to the other large burner, which is at the back of the stove, and now I'm going to put my chicken in this one. I'm using the pasta insert so that I can lift the bones out quite easily, and then I can pick any meat off of the bones and put them aside for another meal. I'm just going to use the hot water to dislodge the pieces that are stuck in here, and it doesn't hurt to pick up a little bit of the fat that's in here because that adds flavor. And I can skim off the fat later when I chill this. I've laid the carcasses down sideways so they don't stick up so high out of the broth, out of the water. And I'm going to submerge that. And I still have some space there where the water is not to the top of the pot. They're covered, it's good to go. I'm going to throw in 2 smaller bay leaves into this one. Let's cover that. And we're good to go. That one can simmer for a couple of hours as well. Before I got to my tomatoes, I saw that these green beans needed to be processed as well. It's quite quick to chop them, blanch them, and put them in a bag. We can eat these in the next couple of weeks if I just put them in a freezer bag. I'm not going to vacuum seal them this time. But taking that 10 minutes saved these vegetables, and I'm going to start the tomatoes in the next step. So what's that? I already emptied the freezer, put on the chicken broth, put on the vegetable broth. I've done green beans. Now I'm going to start the tomatoes. I've had to do 4 things before I could even start the tomatoes. No wonder I was feeling overwhelmed. I also took a bunch of zucchini and apples that were going bad out to the chickens. So that's 5 jobs I've done already this morning. Yay me! Don't stall now. Keep on going. You're on a roll. I also have a small bowl of ground cherries. What do you do with small batch like this? I'm not fond of eating them just the way they are, but they're not horrible. And I hate to see them go to waste. Leave a comment. Tell me what I can do with these. Water's boiling for my green beans. I'm just going to boil those for 2 minutes and then I'm going to plunge them into ice water to stop the cooking process. Blanching your green beans or any vegetables that you're going to freeze eliminates an enzyme that's on the exterior surface. It helps to protect them from freezer burn, and it helps them to last a little longer. It brightens the color, that prevents them from going woody when they're in the freezer, and they're just delicious. So let's do this. I'm waiting for a timer to go off. I've got less than a minute left here. I'm gonna run my cold water. There we have it, package of green beans. There's enough in there for one meal, or Dan can use bits and pieces as he likes for his ramen. I'm gonna put them in this freezer because this freezer we use on a regular basis for the things that are, let's use this first kind of thing, packages that are open and packages that need to be used up. Now, on to the tomatoes, finally. It's been about 35 or 45 minutes since I started this process. I haven't started the tomatoes yet, but all of those other jobs are out of the way, so I can focus now without feeling overwhelmed. I can start the tomatoes and work quickly and freely from here. Come on down to the countertop. I have a flat of tomatoes. I have two bowls, a large and a regular. The large one will hold the product, the small one will hold the discards. And then I have my cutting board set inside a cookie sheet because the juices from this project are going to run everywhere. That contains it and helps to reduce the mess I have to clean up afterwards. With the Roma style tomatoes, I'm just going to, instead of fighting with coring them, the cores are so tiny, I'm just going to lop off the tops. Then I can squeeze the seeds out if I want. It's not necessary, they'll come out easily enough later. But I'm going to score the end of the tomato, and that's it. This saves having to blanch them. When these come out of the freezer, they will just slide right out of the skins, and I don't have to handle them and boil them and flash them again and peel the skins off. It's going to work well. At this stage is part of the quality control, so if you see spots, this is the time to get them off. I have enough tomatoes that if I come across something that's bad, I don't have to save it. I don't have to worry about saving it. There's over 50 pounds of tomatoes here. Okay, I'm going to turn on the radio to make this go a little faster. I like to listen to a podcast sometimes when I'm doing this, and I can't play that while I'm recording, so I'll get back to you when I'm done. So there we go, the flat's empty. I've got my waste products. Some of the tomatoes were actually already bad. And I have a bin of a bowl of tomatoes. I realized halfway through I should be putting these right into a crock pot, but these ones are ready to go into the freezer. One of the benefits of doing your tomatoes this way and popping them in the freezer, you can process these in January after the holidays are over and after you've worked through some of the jars that are on your pantry shelf. So you'll have jars to do this with, you'll have space on the shelf to do this with, and you'll have a project to do in January when you're not crazy busy like it is in September. There we go. I've weighed these up and I've marked them. Both these bags are a little over 5 pounds. So now when I go to fix that in January, I know what I'm working with. I know I have 5 pounds. Do I need a bag and a half? Do I need 2 bags? I can figure it out from there. These little things, attention to detail now, will make it easier later. I have another batch. Another 11-pound box of tomatoes here. These are out of our own garden, so they're mixed different types. I'm just taking the plum tomatoes again, cutting the tops off, and throwing them straight in the crock pot. I've already washed all of these. When they came in off the garden, I washed them before I put them in the flats. So there's no leaf debris or anything like that on them. All right, this is going to be a long process. I'll get back to you when I'm done. There we go, another crock pot full. I'm going to plug this one in and top it up when it gets low. That's over 30 pounds of tomatoes processed already. This is exciting. It's happening faster than I thought. So I'm going to plug this in and we'll catch up in just a second. My broth is still running here beside me and my tomatoes have been in the crock pot for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I'm just going to take my potato masher and mash them down. The ones on the bottom are soft. The ones on the top are not quite soft, but they're warming up. This will help everything come in contact with the crock just a little bit more. The source of heat just a little bit more. I do have this set on high. My intentions here are to soften these and turn them into liquid. I'll do that with my second crock pot, and I'll come back again later. While I'm waiting for the crock pots to do their thing, I've had my lunch and I'm going to wash the last of these tomatoes. I've cleaned out my sink. I'm going to fill it halfway with water and just dump the tomatoes right in. Enough water in there so they just float a little bit. These were picked yesterday and I should have gotten to them, but life gets in the way sometimes. I'm going to go through these and pick out the ones that are good, the ones that are green, and the ones that are scrap. The ones that are not quite ripe enough yet will go into a separate tray so they can ripen on the tray. The ones that are ready to go will go into a separate tray to be processed today or tomorrow. We've just grabbed these flats from the liquor store. They came with cans of the beer or cans of coolers and stuff in them. They're perfect for this process. I'll target the red ones first. It's really easy to see. Oh, let's see, that one's got stuff on it. Let's get that cleaned off. A dead leaf stuck to it. It's as simple as that. Now I can set these aside and I know which ones need to be processed quick and I know which ones need to have a few days and give me a bit of grace. And by handling every single one, I can find out which ones are bad. Even when I'm coming across some of these for today, or that need to be processed today, they're not entirely bad. They've got some soft spots that need to be dealt with. That's okay. That's part of the process, part of the sorting process. I can even set them aside at one end of this tray so I can process them first when it comes time. These are organically grown, so they're not going to be perfect. So there we go, a flat of tomatoes ready to be used up today, and a flat of tomatoes that can wait for a couple of days. This gives me the grace to set this aside and say, all right, that's enough. When I'm done that, I'm done. I think I'm just going to process these up to go in the freezer. I have guests coming tomorrow. I need to do a little bit of housework before they get here. This time of year when you're busy with canning and processing every single day, some things slide a little bit. It's time to get on those things and make sure that my house is guest ready. Okay, my tomatoes are all processed. I have another bunch that went into the freezer, and I've shut off my broth. It's been simmering for a couple of hours, probably 3 hours. I'm going to let the vegetable broth just cool where it is. Follow me with what I'm going to do with the chicken broth. I've just given this a little stir. The fat has dispersed across the top of the broth. I'm just going to lift the bones and meat out and put them into another dish to cool. There is a lot of meat on there still. I'm just going to let that cool for a few minutes. I'll process it when I can handle it. This is too hot to do much with it, but I don't think there's any solids floating around in there. Nope, just the way it is. And that is straight chicken broth. I did not put any seasoning in that. That way, if we want to salt it, we can salt it. If we want to put pepper or sage or whatever we want. If we want to use it for gravy or if we want to use it for soup, we can use it appropriately and season it appropriately at the moment we're going to use it. For now, it has to go in the fridge so that as the fat cools, it will gel on top, solidify on top, and then we can just lift the fat out. You don't want to be canning fat, although the fat is where the flavor is. And this doesn't look terribly fatty. We'll do that. And that's that for this part of it. Look at what we've got here. My tomatoes are boiling down nicely. Everything is soft, and there is a lot of liquid in there. This liquid can be used for making tomato soup, putting aside and jarring it up as tomato broth or tomato juice. I like to use this for making rice. So if I'm doing a Spanish rice or Mexican rice, I'll throw that in there to flavor the rice before it even starts to cook. I'm going to ladle that broth off, and I have a jug here on the side to put it in. It can go in a pot, but my big pots are all in use right now. It can go in a bowl. My big bowls are all in use right now, so it's going into a juice jug. It'd be better if it was a glass container, but this will work. Oops, I don't want that. I haven't mashed this down a second time. This has just been simmering for a few hours now. Let's save that broth. You can put it through a cheesecloth if you wanted to filter out the seeds, or a sieve that will catch the seeds, or a sieve lined with cheesecloth if that's what floats your boat. And this way, I don't have to wait for my sauce to simmer and simmer and simmer. It's already separated the liquid. Look at how much that has reduced down. There's hardly anything in there now. I have three options. I can add more tomatoes and let this simmer and deal with it again in a few hours. I can mix this with the other crock pot and let them simmer down further together. Or I can put it through the food mill now and go forward from there. I do have all these tomatoes left out. I might as well drop them in and keep this process going. That has given me 1.5 liters of the tomato broth. I still haven't touched the other crock pot. I'm sure I'll have lots more than 1.5 liters when I'm done, and I will bottle that up here shortly. Oh yes, look at the broth in that. There is going to be a lot to drain off of this one. You can see there's a lot of seeds and pulp coming out in this batch. I will have to filter the seeds out of that this time. All right, there we go, 2 liters. Let's set that one aside. I do have a 1 quart, 1 liter jar here. I'm gonna run it under hot water with the tap water to warm the glass up before I start putting that hot broth in there. I do have a 1 liter or 1 quart jar here. I'm going to run this under hot water before I put that hot broth in there. I don't want to shatter the jar from thermal shock. There we go, using the canning funnel just to make it a little less messy. Well, it's the next day. I didn't get it all done yesterday. I got a lot of things started and I'm gonna finish them this morning. I do have guests coming this afternoon, so I have to get this out of the way. I don't want this to linger over till tomorrow. That would be too long to wait. But doing chicken broth, it's good to let it sit overnight. Come have a look. When chicken broth goes into the fridge and sits overnight, all the fat rises to the top. And you can easily come in and skim that off. You don't want the fat in the canning process because it can go rancid before the rest of the product spoils. And if it gets on the rims of the jars, it can cause problems with the seals. So let's just take that fat off of there. This has just come out of the fridge and I haven't turned the stove on yet. So it's just sitting here. Still cold. I'm not going to get 100% of it. I may not even get 50% of it looking at this today. Okay, that's better. I will be pressure canning tomato broth or tomato juice, chicken broth, and vegetable broth, or stock, whichever you prefer to call them. I followed the recipe regarding headspace and timing, and I've done this a few times now. I'm letting the pressure canner vent. I'm going to let that pressure canner vent steam for 10 minutes, and then I will put the weight on it for my elevation, and I will process that for the longest product that's in there. Right now it has pints of chicken stock. I had to switch from quarts down to pints. And it has pints of vegetable stock. The vegetable stock has to be in there for 30. The chicken only has to be in there for 20. So we'll run that for 30 minutes once I put the weight on it and pressure comes up. In that time, I can get all the cleanup done in the kitchen. Yes, somebody's got to wash the dishes. If I'm doing a follow-up recipe with the tomato broth, I need to get this done. I need these large pots, and there's no sense in putting them in the dishwasher if I need them in less than an hour. And here we go. There we go. I got the kitchen cleaned up. Those dishes that are in the sink I will be using again. My 4 jars, lids sitting on the counter, eggs, and a towel waiting for the stuff to come out of the canner, and the canner. That took all of 7 minutes. Now that it's all cleaned up, I get to start the tomatoes and make a mess all over again. I'm going to put the tomatoes through the food mill, and that will separate the skins and seeds from the pulp so that I can make some tomato sauce. And I have the tomato juice already reserved in the fridge waiting to just be heated up and put into a canner of some type. I'm not sure at this point if I'm going to be water bath canning or pressure canning. I'm making better time than I expected, and we'll see how this all goes. Oh, it's warm in this kitchen today. I got my vegetable broth done, and I got my chicken broth done. I have put my tomatoes through a sieve. I tried putting them through the food mill. I'm really disappointed with that food mill I've got that attaches to my KitchenAid mixer. So I ended up just putting them through a sieve, and that pulled out all the seeds and skins. That makes me happy. I still have a use for the seeds and skins. I was able to get a couple of liters of tomato juice out of that. Now I'm just going to heat the tomato juice and heat the tomato sauce, bottle them up into pint jars, and water bath them for 35 minutes because they both go for 35 minutes. And I still have maybe an hour and a half before my guests get here, so I can get this done. Fingers crossed. If you're going to water bath can your tomatoes, you should be adding an acid of some type. Whether it's lemon juice or citric acid or apple cider vinegar, white vinegar, whatever it is that you're adding, it needs to bring down the acid level. Your mother didn't do it this way, your grandmother didn't do it this way. This isn't how you learned how to do it 30 years ago. Times have changed. Our genetically modified tomatoes that have just been bred repeatedly, even if it's not genetically modified in a lab, it may still be bred over and over and over to get a sweeter tomato, a tomato that is more bug resistant, etc. Those features may have altered the acid level of your tomatoes compared to what they were 30 or 40 years ago. So for safety's sake, you want to have your pH below 4.6 and either test them and with a pH tester, a strip, or whatever the method is, or just simply add the lemon juice. I don't have time today to go in and test all of this stuff, so I'm just going to throw in a tablespoon of lemon juice per jar. And I don't mind the flavor of it. So here we go. I have both tomato juice and tomato sauce here, and they are hot. I should have put this in the bottom of the jar, but I forgot. These have a 1/2 inch head space. This may alter the head space a little bit. My water bath canner is heating up right now, and I do have a few more jars to fill. My lids have been heated and rinsed and all of that. I'm going to get a stir stick here. I'm going to stir this lemon juice in a bit. So I have to wipe the rims. I already had lids on these, and they were in the canner, and I recognized that I had forgotten the lemon juice. So I'm fixing it now. And truth be told, I'm cutting it tight with my guests' arrival shortly, but they'll understand. They're really great people. There I have a full canner of tomato sauce and tomato juice, and I'm going to let that come to a boil, and I'll time it for 35 minutes from the time it starts boiling. I will have a lid on it the whole time. And I've got a few dishes to do, and I get to take a break. So I saved the seeds and skins out of my tomato processing, and I spread them on a dehydrator tray. This one I have parchment paper on it as well because this stuff sticks. It sticks to these plastic trays. It's been through the dehydrator. It's run long enough to make sure it's nice and brittle. And I'm just going to drop that into my bullet and make that into a powder. This one is with celery leaves and the part that's too hard to chew. And this one is straight tomato. I use this for thickening any of my tomato sauces. If I've got a dish of tomato sauce on the stove and I realize it's too thin, I'll thicken that up. I can mix that straight up with water and other seasonings, but mostly I just dump it right in my tomato sauce. It's handy to have. Instead of opening a whole jar of tomato paste, you can just use a tablespoon of that. I have tried mixing these with water to see if they could make a trail ready tomato sauce, and there's too much texture to them. They're a bit grainy. So that won't work. Not for me anyways. Wow, that was super noisy. So that's it. It's as simple as putting it through your blender, food processor, or bullet, or whatever it is you have. I'm going to sift out the large particles because I know there's at least one chunk in here that didn't hit the blade. It hasn't given me an incredible lot, but it's fresh and it's going to be used only a tablespoon at a time. And I haven't wasted anything. Tomato powder. That's it for this one. See you next time, guys. Remember to hit that subscribe button and the like and the share. Let YouTube see me just a little bit more.